Episode 10, we get fired up here on Dan Mathews and the Animals. You know what we do around here. I'm Dan Mathews, not the animal. He is the animal. He is Matt Maltepes. And we join you to recap the weekend that was in college football, an exciting weekend in college football. We had the marquee games, Matt, that we covered on the show on Thursday here. But we also had a lot of really other good games out there as well that we did not touch on. I mean, Oregon State, Washington State was a good one. LSU and Arkansas, which is always a close contest for the Golden Boot. That was a good one as well. So a lot of exciting games that happened this weekend. It just goes to show you we are truly into college football now because once the calendar turns from September to October, that is when separation starts to happen, and that is when the national title picture starts to become more clear.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we even have some exciting games this week, so I'm excited to get right into it. We have a lot coming, a lot in store. I can't wait.
For sure. So we will recap what we touched on last week as we touched on Florida State and Clemson. We had talked about, but did not give you any direction necessarily on Colorado and Oregon. Ole Miss at Alabama. We talked about that as well as the game that lived up to its billing there in South Bend, Indiana, between number 6 Ohio State and number 9 Notre Dame, as it literally came down to the last play of the game. Well, I guess you could say second or even third to last play of the game because they put some time back on. Then Ohio State kicked off, kicked it out of bounds, and then Notre Dame had one last chance to maybe, just maybe, be able to have a miracle play. I think right there, Matt, they were trying to channel years ago Miami at Duke, where they had every single lateral, even going back to their own goal line before finally able to get the right combination to go in the right direction and score the winning score there in Durham. But to no avail for Notre Dame as Ohio State loses that one. So let's go through the games that we touched on last week as we talked about Florida State and Clemson. As this one, the over-under was at 55. The final score in overtime, 31-24. Matt, I am not a math major, was not a math major, but I would say that is a push.
Yes, it was a push. We went over. I really thought we had a chance to cash this one. I really did. Unfortunately, didn't go our way. That happens. You can't get every bounce. Some weeks you're not going to have those bounces. In this week, it didn't bounce our way. When we look at the box score, Clemson had 25 first downs to Florida State 16. So they beat them by almost 9, almost 10, almost double digits. Yardage, they beat them by 100 yards, over 100 actually, 429 to 311. Passing yards about the same, but yards per pass pretty similar as well. But Clemson destroyed Florida State on the run game, like 146 yards to 22, 3.6 yards per carry to 1.1, a huge difference. But here we had a fumble loss by Clemson, which really hurt them. You go to the play-by-play. I mean, the fumble return for touchdown, you had one of them. And then you had a missed field goal by Clemson. And later on, you had a turnover downs by Florida State to end the game. But they ended up winning it, obviously, late in OT. So Florida State ended up coming out the victor. And they're a little lucky because they didn't win that box score compared to Clemson. I mean, 25 first down, 16. They almost lost by 10. The run game, 146 yards to 22. You lost by 100 yards in total yardage. I mean, they got to be happy that they came out with this win.
For sure. And I mean, sometimes that's all it takes is to be lucky and to be able to win the game that way. And that's what Florida State was able to do in this one. But I mean, you touched on it. I mean, such close games like this, I mean, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to special teams and it comes down to who turns the ball over less. That turnover differential is absolutely what matters. But I mean, I think Clemson probably comes out of this one saying offensively, man, what the hell else did we need to do in order to be able to win this one? And it just did not go their way, as Florida State probably now has surpassed Clemson in the ACC, going in there and winning the way that they did. But again, in this one, a push, as it was a 31-24 final. And, as you were talking about too, I mean, the test that Florida State still has remaining on the schedule this year, I mean, they've got Duke coming to them in Tallahassee. As we've seen with Riley Leonard, that's not going to be easy. And a little bit later on, they're going to have Miami, the Hurricanes, who are starting to feel themselves after that win against Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago, that they are starting to feel like that maybe they are still in this thing and that they could have a pretty magical season down there in Coral Gables. So while they have mastered the two toughest tests to this point, and I know much to the chagrin of Joe Exotic, who is in prison, and I'm not really sure how he is tweeting, but apparently, I guess Jordan Travis has printed up shirts that say the Tiger King, and Joe Exotic does not like that very much. But who's to argue with what Jordan Travis has done so far? Because the two toughest games, the two toughest Tigers out there, he's been able to master the test.
Yeah, he's 100% been able to. You look at Clemson, you look at LSU, look at the performances. I mean, this guy, he's up there for the Heisman. You know, he's worthy of the Heisman right now. He's up there, one of those guys. Michael Penix, some other guys up there as well. It should be an interesting race. I'm interested to see what happens, and we'll see as the season goes along.
Can't count out Jaden Daniels either at LSU 2 weeks in a row. He has been the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for LSU, but who's to say that they cannot run the table? I mean, because they're going to have a tough one on the road this week against Ole Miss. And then, of course, you've got to go on the road a little bit later on in the season and try to beat Alabama, which with LSU, the way they're playing on offense right now, hard to say they can't feel good about that game. So this might be one of the more crowded Heisman Trophy races that we have seen in some time. And oh, by the way, Quinn Ewers at Texas is doing some good things right now as they were able to have a pretty nice win over the weekend against Baylor. A game we touched on but didn't necessarily get too deep into was Colorado at Oregon. This, of course, has continued to be a storyline even after the game. Of course, there was the ESPN footage of Dan Lanning's pregame speech. And then, of course, Oregon comes back with not a hype video, a recap video showing, hey, we were pretty warranted to feel the way we did towards Colorado, with subtitles of what Colorado players were saying and everything. But still, Oregon showing, yeah, we're a better we're a better program than you are. I was about to say better school. We're a better program than you are right now, and they proved it on Saturday, taking them down 42-6.
Yeah, man, this game wasn't even close. Oregon, like you said, won 42-6. Look at the first downs, 30 first downs to 13, almost tripled them there. Oregon more than doubled them in yardage, 522 yards to 198. I mean, they just flat out destroyed the team. They destroyed the Buffalo's defense on the ground for 240 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry. Their QB, Bo Nix, we talked about it before. He was sharper than ever. I mean, he went, 28 for 33, despite his one interception, but 28 33, pretty damn good. D-line was all over Sanders for Colorado. They had 7 sacks on him. The whole world, I mean, they ended up betting on primetime. And the bookmakers, they were, salivating, offering everyone tons and tons and tons of boosts and promos, different promos for even more action on the Deion Sanders team. Oregon is laying 21, but still would have covered 35. We know that Travis Hunter was a huge player for this team, obviously. And I think it showed a bit. It isn't the reason they necessarily lost, but it might be a reason why they couldn't hang around the number. Even the Colorado, they got smoked. You can't discredit what Deion Sanders has done with this Colorado team, what they've accomplished. I mean, they forced the bookmakers to adjust their win total from 3.5 to 6.5, which is a huge move. I mean, they earned the respect from the bookmakers, but bookmakers also earned some money this week against them. So the books made out big, huge victory for them. So future reference for any bettors out there, anytime you're on this side of majority, make sure to pause and reflect.
That's it. Fade the public, brother. I mean, that's the way it goes. My good buddy Jimmy Ott, who works down in southern Louisiana, that's always his line, and it couldn't be more true. I mean, it's one of the things, and I actually want to go through something really quick that you just mentioned right there, because a lot of people can subscribe to services where you see, people will send out the statistics of this is the percentage of bets on this team, this is the percentage of money on this team. Usually the rule of thumb is look at the money, don't look at the bets that are out there, because the bets, for the most part, that's the general public who doesn't know anything.
So, yeah, I mean, percentage of bets obviously is going to be usually, especially during game day, that's when you get the most influx of, because these regular bettors, average everyday bettors, they're not betting ahead of time. They're not trying to get the right number ahead of time a week before or 5 days before NFL Sunday. You know what I mean? They all go to the window on Sunday or their apps Saturdays, and they go and they bet. So, I mean, that's when you're really going to see where the public really is at. Truly, it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the end of the week. But you will see sharp action come in. Obviously, they'll tax some soft limits early sometimes, and then as the week goes on, you'll see it come in as well. So, yeah, there's a difference between the percentage of money and a percentage of bets. So keep an eye on that.
There you go. And we just learned you something right here on Dan Mathews and the Animals. Let's talk about Ole Miss at Alabama, as this was a popular one too in terms of the public going Ole Miss in this one. But Bama right there, that 7 number, they cover that 7 number, 24-10 with a win there in Tuscaloosa. The over-under, I had it at 55 and a hook. I don't know if that one too, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, dipped down to 55 flat right there. But regardless, the plus 34, the 34 total does not cover the over in that one. So not a cover for this game.
No, Alabama, they won this game, but this game to me was actually closer than what the final score suggested. Alabama, obviously, with the 7, but I mean, we look at a first down battle. It was pretty damn close. Alabama had 20 first downs to 17 for Ole Miss. Bama had 356 yards to 301 for Miss. Saban's defense, they had 5 sacks compared to Miss's 4 sacks. Nick Saban's offense also patted the football for 130 yards, despite only averaging 2.9 a carry, which isn't that much. I mean, when we compare that to Miss, though, the Rebels, their run game wasn't existent at all in this one. The big difference we saw in the box score was the time possession metric. Crimson Tide, they controlled, the clock here, 34 minutes and 30 seconds to 25 minutes and 30 seconds. Another big difference in this game, though, was the missed field goal by the Rebels and a late turnover down on the final drive. I mean, if they, kick that field goal early, they might be in the game. You don't know. And then that late turnover and downs, they maybe not go for it. They get some points in that drive. So both of which could have been points to the board. With that being said, if they got points to the board with those 2 scores, it's possible that they could have covered this number. Box score, not 14 points off in the box score. Sure, they lost, but not by what was indicated. So, yeah, that's the difference between the Ole Miss plus 7 backers being winners or losers last Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost vintage Alabama, if you will, of a really good running game with Jace McClellan and much better, much more improved offensive line play from the Crimson Tide, and also stellar defensive play with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Dallas Turner, and the names that Nick Saban has on that defense. So maybe this is an Alabama team here that kind of pivots, and Nick Saban says, I got to go back to the old school references for my team if we want to be able to, again, run the table and find our way back to Atlanta for the SEC championship game and have a chance right there to be able to knock off Georgia yet again. Because I think we can agree here, just kind of, pivoting off of that, the overarching forecast for the SEC, it does not look like anybody is going to touch Georgia in the SEC East. It does not seem like Tennessee is up for the task. I think that Florida has probably been a little bit of a surprise with that Tennessee win, but I would not expect them to be able to muster enough in a few weeks there in Jacksonville. And in Kentucky, the same deal. Missouri, a nice story. We're going to find out how good Missouri is next week when they host LSU there in Columbia. But aside from that, it does seem like it is setting up for at least Georgia on that side. And who knows? I guess we'll have to see what happens with LSU if they're able to get this win this weekend against Ole Miss, and then in a few weeks go on the road and take on Alabama. I mean, that's kind of been the de facto SEC West championship game every single year, is whoever wins between LSU and Alabama is who represents that side of the conference in Atlanta.
Yeah, Georgia, again, I mean, they seem like the top dogs. I guess that's why they're called the Bulldogs, right? No, I don't see anyone catching Georgia. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. They had more of a cupcake schedule compared to some other teams. And they look as strong as, they look pretty damn strong. So, there's no testing. I know my good friend on the sports betting show, Jim the Sheep, he's been talking about Georgia all year. So, credit to him. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right, let's close it out by talking about Ohio State and Notre Dame, as this one, like I said, I mean, it lived up to the hype as we were expecting and hoping for a close contest like this. But I think with the number two, again, being right around that 55 and a hook number, it was much more low scoring than we thought. I mean, I can't remember if there were points right before the half on a field goal or something like that. But ergo, it was an incredibly low scoring first half. And then that kind of set the tone for the rest of the way for Ohio State to have an opportunity late in the game where they converted a crucial fourth down after missing a couple of crucial fourth downs early in the game. They get a huge fourth down conversion. And then, with, I believe, one timeout left, or they had just spent their timeout, a huge pass to right outside the goal line, right at the one. And they then try a pass play. That doesn't work. And then they decided to hand it off and get it into the end zone. I believe it was Mayan Williams who got it into the end zone for Ohio State. Buckeye fans, if I got that wrong, please hit me up. But still, as time was expiring, able to get into the end zone, because if they get stuffed on that play, that game's over. Notre Dame pulls off the upset.
Yeah, I mean, that's how close this one was. It took a game-winning drive by Ohio State to win it. The game was pretty even throughout the whole box score. Notre Dame, 22 first downs to 19. They actually beat them 355 yards to 366, pretty damn even. Yards per play, almost even once again. Penalties, almost the same. But Notre Dame did win the time possession battle, big time, 35 minutes to 25 minutes. So about 10-minute disparity between the two. Both teams each had 2 turnover on downs. But the big thing here was Notre Dame missed a field goal. And that field goal is the difference between, going, between a win and a loss, possibly. That's how even this game was. I mean, McCord, QB for the Buckeyes, he played pretty damn well, 89.5 QBR. However, we did see some key injuries, which always sucks to see such a great player like Marvin Harrison Jr. get injured, some stuff like that. But Notre Dame, to me, was definitely the right side on this one, even though the game landed on 3. I mean, the game was even neck for neck. And if they hit that field goal, you can't handicap some of these occurrences. I mean, that's part of the pendulum and the way it swings back and forth. So, yeah, I mean, to me, Notre Dame was the right side, even though the game ended up landing on 3.
Yeah, and for me personally, I mean, I took the Ohio State 3. So once I saw that they put time back on the clock and made them kick the extra point, I was like, oh man, what could have been. And then the other thing is too, is with all the laterals. I mean, part of you, if you took Ohio State -3, was hoping for a recurrence of, Scott Van Pelt uses it all the time, of the laterals when they played Northwestern at Northwestern, and then they scooped and scored. And I remember Brent Musburger being on that game. And of course, Musburger, a notorious gambler, a guy that would even talk about it during his broadcasts. And I loved his line where he goes, "There is a large portion of the country with that play that just said, 'You've got to be kidding me.'" And I mean, it was one of those that I think, people who had that Ohio State 3 were like, scoop and score, go, go.
They're hoping for it.
That's it. But of course, they take the safe play, say, no, let's go ahead and just take the win, get out of here. And it was a really good win at that. So a fun week that was in college football, and even more fun week coming up this week to close out the month of September. The opening month of college football is done. Sadness abounds. It goes too fast. What are we doing? But anyway, this is when college football gets even more exciting. So we will have a lot of great games to be able to get you ready for the college football slate ahead this weekend. Matt, any parting shots?
I took some small cash on the Pitt VTech under 41. So just a little sleeper play. Small cash, not too serious. Just nibble on it.
All right. There you go. See, I told you we do Easter eggs here as well for you when you listen and watch Dan Mathews and the Animals. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as well as listen to us on the podcast as well on your way to work. Hey, we don't talk to you very long. We talk to you about 15, 20 minutes, if even that. So that absolutely gets you across the bridge from Jersey into Philly, or that gets you, if you're on the subway there in Chicago, wherever you're at, it gets you to work and it helps you get ready for the college football slate ahead. We are here for you. That's what we are about here on Dan Mathews and the Animals. I'm Dan Mathews. He's the animal, Matt Maltepes. Always appreciate having a chance to catch up with all of you. Until Thursday, we'll talk to you soon.